Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Mateo.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
We begin with the latest developments in the war in Ukraine. Moscow and Kyiv, they are preparing to send delegations to Turkey for a second round of peace talks today. And this comes after a Ukrainian drone attack destroyed more than 40 Russian planes deep in Russia's territory. Ukraine claims the operation caused losses totaling at least $2 billion. Here's President Volodymyr Zelensky speaking through an interpreter.
34% of the strategic cruise missile carriers stationed at air bases were hit. Our personnel operated across multiple Russian regions in 3 different time zones, and the people who assisted us were withdrawn from Russian territory before the operation. They are now safe.
Zelensky's comments came as his country also came under one of the longest barrages from Russian missiles and drones on Sunday.
Now, Lisa, another major story that we're following this morning. 8 people have been injured in an attack at an event for Israeli hostages in Colorado. Officials say the suspect, 45-year-old Mohamed Sabry Soliman, shouted "Free Palestine" and threw an incendiary device into the crowd during the attack in the city of Boulder. Local police chief Stephen Redfern says the neighborhood will stand strong.
Boulder is not immune to tragedy, sadly, and I know a lot of people are scared right now. A lot of people are upset and questioning how this happened and why. All I know is Boulder has recovered before from acts of violence, and we will again.
Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern says the 8 victims who were wounded range in age from 52 to 88, and the injuries span from serious to minor.
Karen, in Europe, a nationalist candidate backed by Donald Trump won Poland's presidential election. Karol Nawrocki, who has no previous political experience, defeated the centrist mayor of Warsaw in a blow to the country's pro-European Union government. Bloomberg's Oliver Crook is covering the election in Warsaw.
I think there are also much larger implications beyond Poland for this. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that the EU is currently engaged in a trade war, trade diplomacy with the United States. And what the EU really wanted was more solidarity. And they did not want a sort of prominent nation, a protagonist within Europe, basically undermining the unity within Europe and electing somebody who is really sort of very EU skeptical.
Bloomberg's Oliver Crook says Karol Nawrocki won 50.9%, while Rafael Trzaskowski won 49.1%.
Well, Lisa, tensions may be escalating between China and the U.S. China is now accusing the U.S. of violating their recent trade deal and vows to take measures to defend its interests. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce is rebuking President Trump's claim on Friday that Beijing breached the consensus reached in Geneva last month. Still, the director of the White House National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, believes the 2 leaders could talk this week.
We expect us going to have a wonderful conversation about the trade negotiations this week with President Xi. That's our expectation. But the bottom line is that we've got to be ready in case things don't happen the way we want.
The White House National Economic Council's Kevin Hassett spoke on ABC's This Week. Catch the program Sundays right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Karen, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also made the rounds on the Sunday talk shows. He spoke with CBS's Face the Nation, also heard right here on Bloomberg Radio, about the federal debt ceiling.
The United States of America is never going to default. That is never going to happen. That we are on the warning track and we will never hit the wall.
Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent declined to specify an X date for when the Treasury will run out of cash. Republican congressional leaders have attached an increase in the debt limit to President Trump's tax and spending bill, which potentially puts avoiding a default at the mercy of complex negotiations over the legislation.
Lisa, General Electric is passing on additional charges caused by President Trump's tariffs. The world's largest aircraft engine maker has about $500 million in residual cost challenges stemming from the tariffs. Chief Executive Larry Culp spoke earlier this morning with Bloomberg's Guy Johnson in New Delhi.
What we've been advocating for is a return to where we were on the heels of the 1979 Civil Aviation Agreement, which really provided tariff-free trade amongst all the signatories. That was a positive for the U.S. aerospace industry. I think that is why the U.S. enjoys a $75 billion annual trade surplus today. But we'll see how that plays out. There are a series of bilateral negotiations that are active.
GE Chief Executive Larry Culp says he is in close contact with the company's supply chain and would like the industry to speak with a unified voice to achieve a duty-free regime.
Meanwhile, the global airline industry is scaling back its profit outlook because of the trade tensions. The International Air Transport Association now expects the industry to earn a collective $36 billion this year. The new forecast is about $600 million less than its previous forecast at the end of last year. The North American market is expected to see the highest total profit contribution at $12.7 billion, followed by Europe.
Lisa, let's turn to the markets now. And again, futures are lower as we kick off the trading week. As we mentioned, China and the U.S. are accusing each other of violating a trade deal concluded last month. President Trump also said he would double tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. And the dollar may be in for more pain ahead. We get that story with Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. Morgan Stanley predicts in a year from now, the dollar is going to tumble to levels last seen during the pandemic. They see the U.S. dollar index falling about 9%. Well, the Morgan Stanley report is adding to a chorus of voices questioning the outlook for the dollar as traders and analysts weigh President Trump's disruptive approach to trade. The U.S. dollar index has dropped just about 10% since a February peak as the president's trade policies dent sentiment on U.S. assets and trigger a rethink on the world's reliance on the greenback. As a result, in the U.S., prices of imported goods, they're expected to rise, while the cheaper dollar means American exports could become more attractive to customers overseas. The U.S. dollar is the closest thing there is to a global currency. It's the cornerstone of international finance and a payment method of choice for more international transactions than any other currency. This morning, dollar DXY down about 0.6%. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, thank you, John. In deal news, French drug maker Sanofi, it's agreed to buy Cambridge, Massachusetts-based Blueprint Medicines. Now, the price tag, more than $9.1 billion.
Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. In Massachusetts, protests were held at Milford Town Hall after an 18-year-old was detained by federal immigration agents over the weekend as he drove to volleyball practice off campus. Friends and relatives who have only identified him as Marcelo are upset. His girlfriend is rallying support for the student athlete.
He is not a criminal. He's a member of his community, and he's never done anything wrong.
Meanwhile, Nick Molinari, president of the Milford Teachers Association, called it immoral, unnecessary, and should be universally condemned. Over the weekend, President Trump withdrew his nomination for Jared Isaacman to be the next NASA administrator after learning that Isaacman had donated to Democrats. Isaacman is a close ally of Elon Musk, who announced last week he's leaving his role in Washington. A former personal assistant to Sean Diddy Combs, who claims the rap mogul raped her, will face further cross-examination at his sex trafficking trial today. Meanwhile, President Trump did not rule out a pardon for Combs at the White House. Former federal prosecutor and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Never before have we seen a president who makes it a gate to getting to a pardon to be a political supporter of his, a vocal current political supporter.
Chris Christie spoke to ABC. They honored the lives of 9/11 first responders. Thousands of runners participated in the annual Tunnel to Towers climb at One World Trade Center in New York City Sunday morning. Runners included Michael Burke, the brother of FDNY Captain Billy Burke, one of the 343 firefighters killed in the 9/11 attack.
I think of, my brother Billy. That day he told his men to keep going. I'm right behind you. So that's what I was thinking going up those stairs. Just keep going, don't quit. He never stopped. He made sure his men got out. He was always trying to get more out.
Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Yankees haven't been swept in a series all season. They lost the first two to the Dodgers, but after that 18-2 drubbing Saturday, they salvaged one last night, winning in L.A. 7-3 behind another strong outing from Ryan Yarbrough. 6 innings, gave up just a run, 4 hits. He's 3-0. His ERA is under 3. The Yanks went 6-3 on the road trip. Come home, play Cleveland tomorrow. It's the Mets who play at Dodger Stadium tonight at Citi Field. Mets trailed the Rockies 1-0.
And Alonso hits one in the air to deep right field. Back goes Freeman to the warning track near the wall. It's out of here. Pete Alonso goes the other way for a 3-run homer. And the Mets go in front 3-1.
On SNY, later home runs by Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. Mets won 5-3, which makes Colorado's record 9-50. Rockies are on pace to lose 137 games, which would shatter the record. The Red Sox won 3-1 in Atlanta. The Nationals lost 3-1 at Arizona. The Liberty now 7-0 after beating the Sun by 48 points. Second most lopsided win in WNBA history. The Memorial Golf in Ohio won by who else? Scotty Scheffler had 1 bogey in his last 40 holes. Finished 10 under par, won by 4. This is the tournament run by Jack Nicklaus. He was asked about Scheffler.
He wouldn't want to brag about what he does, but he has the ability to bring his level to whatever level it needs to be. That's what good players do. And, he's not good players, great players. I mean, look at the record that he has had the last few years. It's unbelievable.
In Wisconsin, they played the U.S. Women's Open. The Swede, Maja Stark, won by 2 over world number 1 Nelly Korda, whose brother lost in the third round of the French Open. But 2 Americans are into the men's quarterfinals in Paris, and none had been since Andre Agassi in 2003. Straight set wins in the 4th round for both Tommy Paul and Francis Tiafoe. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen?
All right, John, thank you. And futures are lower this morning. S&P futures down 0.6% on 35 points. Dow futures down 0.5% or 214 points. NASDAQ futures down 0.8% or 165 points. 10-year Treasury yield 4.43%.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 5:13 on Wall Street. Drone strikes ramp up in Ukraine and Russia ahead of crucial peace talks this week. An attack and an event for Israeli hostages in Colorado. Here to tell us the very latest on these world events is Bloomberg News global business editor Josh Galud. I have to start with Ukraine. They staged this dramatic series of strikes across Russia. Around the same time, you had Moscow launch one of its longest drone missile strikes against Kyiv. What were the targets and how bad is the damage?
The damage appears to be pretty significant. Ukraine launched a very widespread attack with drones, and it reached all the way into eastern Siberia, which is clearly meant to be a signal of how capable they are of inflicting damage going forward. That's certainly a disincentive to Russia to keep this thing going on. They targeted mainly Russian aircraft, military aircraft, including long-range bombers that are capable of deploying conventional and nuclear weapons. So it's really a significant blow to the Russian military. More importantly, it's a signal of what kind of problems Ukraine can continue to create for them going forward if they don't reach a ceasefire. On the other hand, Russia, as you suggested, that Russia launched an attack on Kyiv, and at least 12 people were killed in a strike on a military base. So, both sides heading into these talks, which are restarting today, both sides have sent a very strong signal that they're really not that these talks are very unlikely to result in a significant progress towards a ceasefire today or this week. It could be, but there's still a lot of space to bridge before they reach any kind of agreement.
Yeah, so the talks are still happening and taking place?
Yes, they're still taking place, and they're meant to meet today in Istanbul.
Okay, and the kind of message, you mentioned this a little bit, but dive a little bit deeper of what kind of message these latest attacks send as they go into these talks.
Right. Well, both sides have been pretty dug in on their positions, and Ukraine has pushed very hard to first secure a ceasefire and, get security from the West and making sure that it is, a widely agreed cease to fighting that international partners are part of. Russia, on the other hand, has been, it's had these, quote, maximalist demands, saying that, they'll only agree to a ceasefire when there's a formal commitment for Ukraine not to join NATO, when there's a recognition of its territorial gains throughout this war, and some other conditions that have been just completely rejected by Kyiv. So they remain very far apart. And you've seen President Donald Trump sort of distance himself from the process as the prospects for peace have gone down. So, look, they are meeting today. Again, it's a high level meeting, but it's not the president's. It's government officials. So we'll have to see where things land at the end of the week.
All right, Josh, before you go, I have to get into this developing news in Colorado. A number of people were injured after that attack. It was an event for Israeli hostages in Colorado. Any word on motive? The FBI is saying it's a targeted act of violence.
That's right. They've said it's a targeted act of violence. And of course, this comes after last month's incident where 2 Israeli embassy employees were shot and killed in Washington right outside an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. So at the same time, the person they arrested, they claim was screaming "Free Palestine" as well. So in terms of motivation, if that is true, it seems relatively clear. And but we'll have to see as we get updates later today from Colorado.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak, your morning podcast on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 92.9 in Boston, and nationwide on Sirius XM Channel 121.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto interfaces.
And don't forget to subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. It's the latest news whenever you want it, in 5 minutes or less. Search Bloomberg News Now on your favorite podcast platform to stay informed all day long. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Lisa Mateo. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.